So this is some work I did for my undergraduate dissertation. It's about the application of agent-based modeling techniques to the simulation of food web evolution. So just to start off, a little bit of basics about what agent-based modeling actually is. So it's a method of simulation whereupon there are these autonomously acting agents which act based on defined rules. And the idea is that the generalized behavior of the system emerges from the interaction of all these individual agents, rather than explicitly encoding the system-wide behavior that would be occurring with like more traditional system dynamics simulation approaches. And in the case of simulating an ecosystem, each agent would be like one individual animal. So what was the purpose of this project? So ecological research needs new tools in order to generate deeper understanding of the underlying mechanics of food webs. And this is important research because its impact can reveal how humanity is impacting the evolution of ecosystems. An effective simulation can be a very useful tool for kind of revealing these underlying mechanics and how it's all working. And agent-based modeling in particular represents a kind of more insightful approach to this simulation. So the aims of this project. First of all, this project was based on some work of my supervisor for the dissertation, Emma Norling, who created kind of a simple agent-based model for this purpose in 2007. So the first aim is to re-implement that work using kind of more modern frameworks, then to identify potential improvements, extend the model to include these potential improvements, and finally produce a model that shows more realistic kind of food web diversity and more realistic population dynamics than Emma's model did in 2007. So the models I created for this project. First of all was just a re-implementation model that closely followed the mechanics described by the paper of Emma in 2007. And it just aimed to create basically the same results if possible. Then there was the extended model, which introduced the concept of geographic diversity and was experimenting with how that would affect the diversity of species created. And it also made some other small mechanics changes, such as each agent using a set amount of energy in each time step. And then finally, I created a model which I call the heterogeneous behavior model, which more kind of fundamentally changed the underlying mechanics of the model. And I'll discuss that in a bit more detail in a few minutes. And finally, all of these models were developed in the NetLogo framework. So just to describe some of the mechanics of the re-implementation and extended models. So each agent had 10 discrete features, which were selected from a set of 500 possible features, and these features were entirely abstract. And each possible feature had a random score against each other possible feature, which was defined in a big 500 by 500 matrix. And these scores are used in determining the outcome of interactions. So interactions occur when two agents are in the same spatial location. And when this occurs, the scores of each agent are summed up. And if the total of one of them exceeds a given threshold, then one agent can eat the other one. So it would be analogous to one animal eating another one in an ecosystem and then gaining its resources. And agents reproduce whenever they exceed a set threshold of energy, and the offspring will have a chance of one feature being switched out, which would be analogous to a mutation occurring, which is kind of where the evolution stems from. And the reproduction is entirely from one agent, so it doesn't occur when like two agents of the same species interact or anything like that. It's quite simple. So just to touch on some results found. So this on the left is a little bit hard to see, but this is would represent like one kind of prey species, and this represents one predator species. So these are the results from the original model by Emma Norling. and on the right is the food web produced by my re-implementation model. So you can see it's quite similar with two different species occurring. And this is the results of the extended model that I produced. On the left, I've included a kind of real world food web for the sake of comparison. And you can see there are that this extended model produces a lot more diversity of species than the re-implementation or original models did, which is a very positive step forward. But there were some kind of unrealistic aspects of this food web, such as the presence of bidirectional connections or cycles in the food web. And these aren't characteristics that you'd like typically see in a real world food web. So this kind of left some room for improvement of the model. So this led on to the heterogeneous behavior model, because I thought we'd kind of reach the limits of what was possible using the previous model mechanics. So with this model, I aim to more fundamentally change the mechanics of the system. So what I did was change the mechanics. So the agents would, instead of being represented by discrete values, will be set by a set of continuous floating point values, which in the case of this model were predatory ability, plant eating ability, defense, and speed. And these features once again play a role in determining the outcome of agent to agent or agent to environment interactions. One example of this is this kind of decision operation I've included here, which says that if the predatory ability of a predator agent multiplied by some random modifier is greater than the defense of a prey agent, then it means that the predator agent can eat the prey agent and gain its resources. And if this isn't true, then the interaction will not occur and it will just be ignored. And each of these continuous features mutates by a very small increment as each offspring is produced, with the idea being that over multiple generations, evolution can kind of occur from this process. There was one kind of key issue with this approach, though, which was differentiating between the different species, because in the re-implementation and extended models, the species were just defined by a discrete set of values, which meant that they were kind of linearly separable. So any agent that had a particular set of features would be classified as the same species. But with these continuous features, each agent has a unique set of values, so this can't be applied anymore. So in order to solve this problem, I devised a unsupervised learning clustering approach. So a clustering algorithm that is applied to this needs to be able to cluster into an unspecified number of clusters, which would be analogous to the species, because we don't know how many species actually persist within the food web. So an algorithm like k-means clustering would not be applicable, for example, to this, because that requires a set number of clusters. So instead, I used a db-scan algorithm to achieve this. And this, quite simply, this algorithm clusters points together which are within a set distance epsilon within the four-dimensional feature space of the four continuous features. And here are some of the results that were found using this approach. Once again, I've included the real-world food web on left for comparison. And you can see, once again, there's a lot more diversity created within this food web than there was with the original model. But in comparison to the extended model, it follows quite a nice sort of feed-forward structure. There's no like cycles in this food web or bidirectional connections. And you can see just visually, it looks quite similar to the real-world food web on the left. So this was a really positive result. And just a little bit of future development potential for this sort of project. So one possibility would be adding additional features to agents, which could allow for more realistic interactions. And this could be any sort of characteristic of real world animals that could be applied. In addition, there could be further mechanics updates, such as multi-agent reproduction, which will be more kind of realistic to real world ecosystems and food webs. There could also be alternative methods of species determination rather than unsupervised clustering. I mean, a different clustering algorithm could be applied, or there could be some sort of perhaps ancestry tree where species are defined by their like lineage rather than just which other agents they're most similar to. And finally, it could be developed in a more powerful modeling framework, such as Repath Symphony, because this could allow for larger scale simulations, and this could perhaps lead to more interesting and insightful results. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than willing to try to answer them.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks a lot. So any questions? So again, people are clapping virtually in emoticon style, the best style. Okay, so I'll wait for more questions to be put in the chat. So perhaps, can you explain a bit more? Can you elaborate on your actual techniques? What tools did you use to get these results?
What do you mean by that? The framework? Or?
I mean, okay, so basically you're trying to simulate dynamics, right?
Yep.
But how do you actually get the results? So you write the model down. So
yeah, so it's an agent-based model that's implemented in NetLogo. So you have these kind of interaction rules and rules that the agents follow, and they're all moving around in a kind of two-dimensional space, kind of like in this kind of field, you can kind of think of it as, and they all interact. And once they are in the same spatial location, that's when the kind of interaction rules are applied. And they were, to some extent, they're based on kind of randomness, in the same way that, you know, like a real world hunt or something would be ultimately sort of random. It does have an aspect of randomness to it.
Okay. And when you say for example, you can try to change the mechanics of the agents, how is this implemented? How do you change the rules, I suppose, or the features?
Is this in the heterogeneous behavior
right,
model,
yes.
model?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just go back to the slide. Yeah, so it kind of, it's a little bit hard to describe actually. With the first two models, they're very abstract concepts, and the features they actually have don't change the way they actually move within the environment or anything like that. They only affect the outcome of the interactions. So the idea with this one was it would not only affect the interactions, but also kind of their movement within the environment and things like that, the way they interact with the environment, the way they interact with each other, and all these things would kind of play in to the kind of emergent behavior of the simulation.
Okay, I see. Okay, thank you very much.